Hey, John Gilroy. Today we're going to answer the question, for federal software, should security be baked in or bolted on? Hit the music, Manny.
Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, where industry leaders share insights on innovation with a focus on reducing cost and improving security for federal technology. If you like the Federal Tech Podcast, please support us by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts.
Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator while I'm sitting down here at the AWS Public Sector Summit in lovely downtown Washington, D.C., walking around the floor, dragging people into the studio here. I thought I'd drag this big, tall guy in and see what he has to say. His name is Joel Krooswik. He's the federal CTO of a company that most people know called Gitlab, G-I-T-L-A-B. I thought we'd drag him in here and get the truth. I want the truth about SBOMs. I want the truth about security by design and maybe some information about a recent survey they've conducted. And hey, let's talk about FedRAMP for a change. So, Joel, down at AWS, what do you think so far?
It's been a great show. I cannot believe the number of people and all the great things that they've got to say. It's just been a dramatic, encouraging experience. You know, sometimes that doesn't happen, right? You get to a show and you never know what's coming. We're running through socks fast. I'll just put that out there as well.
I've gotten on planes, gone to conferences, and walk in and go, meh.
Yeah, not here.
No. I mean, so many people. I mean, I've come to this conference now for 4 years now, and there are people who are waiting in line an hour and a half to get in.
And it's warm out there to wait today.
Wow. Yeah, it's a terrible place to be. Okay, I had the silly open about baking in software and bolting it on. And so what's your stand?
Well, I think there's a clear stance that I take on baking in security. It's interesting, we've talked about this for a long time, and while if you just grab the average person off the floor here, they're going to tell you today, yeah, bake it in. And then when you ask about how they're doing it, well, we might be bolting it on, right?
Well, it's all like people say, do you work out 2 or 3 times a week? I'm going to start next week.
Yeah, exactly. We're seeing that there's progress made here. That's what I like about it, right? Each quarter that we have this conversation, whether it's customers or at a show, we're seeing more and more progress on getting security baked into applications. And so we're thrilled to see that happening, and we're thrilled to see that more software is coming out secure by design.
Okay, I'll use a number that everyone's used, and you've used it several times. 90% of systems generated today are comprised of third-party apps. We probably know that, you know. Generally speaking, people hit the easy button, they grab some code, they pop it in, and they go out for a pizza or something. Yeah. So it makes life easy for them. The resolution for that and the answer to everything is apparently a software bill of materials, SBOM. Hey, grab that and put it in there, and that's the answer to everything, Joel, right? I mean, that's it.
4 letters to freedom, right?
Yeah.
It's, you know, the SBOM is great, and we're seeing an increased use of it, and there's gotten to be a real value in the output of what an SBOM can give us. But it's not that magic solution just yet. And part of that's because, you know, you mentioned, hey, 90% of code may be made up of third-party software, but maybe only 11 or 12% of it is actively maintained. The SBOM's helping us filter out, well, we just pulled this code in from some third party. Is it reliable? Is it maintained? Is it full of vulnerabilities? Is there some malicious intent that's been injected here? And then once you've got an SBOM in hand, and by the way, you mentioned that we've been working on a survey, right? We just got some survey results back. 25-ish% of everybody that we surveyed says, sure, we're generating SBOMs today. That's great. That's a point in time. And what I like to focus on is the dynamic component of that. What happens the next day when an emergent threat just appears on the scene? Do you know? How do you know? When do you know? And so when we look at SBOMs, you know, from the GitLab perspective, we're really looking at what can an SBOM be over time as it relates to all those third-party threats that pop up on a daily basis.
You know, if you go to Georgetown University, you get a degree in Latin, and it's pretty impressive. Put it in your wall, and people say, yeah, I accomplished that. That's my degree. Now, if you pull a piece of software off and put it in your system and you get the SBOM, what do? You put it in the wall and go, for eternity, this code will be clean.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, we're in an emerging threatscape type of world now, right? And it's being accelerated by AI. Because we develop good code doesn't mean somebody's not going to try to break it tomorrow. It's just the way it works. And so we're watching that dynamically now and very excited about the idea that this is not something static anymore. Now, we're talking about the generation side, right? There's always the consumption side. What do you do when somebody else hands you an SBOM? And how do you understand what that looks like from a threat? And hey, how many of those are you getting? And we're hearing reports of, well, there's 2,500 pages to this. I'm not real sure how to break it down, right? And so, again, how do you import it into your system, break down the threatscape and understand it, and then understand it there forward? And that's kind of where we're living at Gitlab at the moment.
Because if you start using an app or develop an app, it just doesn't sit within the walls on K Street somewhere in downtown Washington, D.C. It could be in a very, very complex cloud system. Yes. It could be in a hybrid system. I mean, we were just speaking to the folks from Rancher. It could be in a container, a managed container somewhere. And by the way, Rancher is finally admitting, yes, we have to consider this whole concept of an SBOM within a container, within a managed Kubernetes. It's just like the Russian doll, a system within a system within a system within a system.
Yes. Yeah, we just literally at Gitlab in our last release released that capability to look at an SBOM related to a container and its operating system dependencies in real time, basically, day to day. What's that threatscape changing to for the container that you're using? It's really something, if you're not watching, anything can happen every day.
Yeah. If you're listening to this and there's snow on the ground, I mean, it's hard to believe, but maybe there's snow on the ground. Maybe in Chicago today there's snow on the ground. You just don't know. You can get an ebook called Driving Success in the Public Sector with DevSecOps. And it's a white paper available at gitlab.com. You can find it there. It gives you a better idea of I didn't even introduce the term DevSecOps, but I think people understand generally what that means, is developing software in a longer period of time. I was at your website this morning, and I found a phrase called fuzz testing. So what the heck is fuzz testing?
Yeah, fuzz testing is one of those things that is becoming more and more common. But what's interesting about fuzz testing is it's testing the fuzzy edges of things. And so if you have built an application or a website that's running and you haven't tested the limits of what can go in those fields, it's very easy to crash an application by just overloading an entry blank, for instance. And so fuzz testing is the idea of cranking as much junk into everything as you can and seeing what breaks within the application. And it creates some fuzz, as you can imagine.
We have a mandate here in Washington, D.C. that we have to say the word artificial intelligence every 22 minutes. And we're coming up on the hour here, and I got to say artificial intelligence. So I know you're using artificial. Tell me how you guys are using it.
Wow. AI has become such a buzzword, hasn't it? And it's a hype cycle word, and it's loaded. There's so much to do with AI. What we're trying to do is make sure that AI doesn't exist in isolation in the software development process. And so what we mean by that is there's 20 different applications of AI throughout our applications so that we don't get stuck somewhere in the process with something that's been sped up dramatically by AI, and then we throw it against a brick wall. And so the application for us looks something like, well, you'd expect in the application development world, maybe we're kicking out new code for you, right? Okay, we're going to help you generate the code. But what about all that legacy code? Can you explain to me what that 30-year-old application does that nobody commented? Not that that's a common scenario, right? What about refactoring the code for me? Memory safety is a big initiative from CISA right now. How do we get there from here? That's time-consuming.
And that old code, how much is even valuable?
Well, exactly. Yeah, we get these stories back of, I'm doing the same thing I was doing before, but thanks to code conversion, we're doing all of that with 10% of the former inefficient code base. That's dramatic.
I think AWS has a product called SageMaker. Is that right? They work with DevSecOps. Is this part and parcel of what you do, working with these larger cloud service providers, or do you mostly work with software development companies?
Yeah, we're all over the place, as you can imagine. Anybody who's creating software, you run into GitLab. And so from that perspective, we do work well with AWS and with the cloud. We've got a lot of templating to take quick advantage of AWS compute and things like that. And a lot of interaction with just about every other product that's out there, because if you have it and it's in-house, chances are you're going to have something you can't leave behind. And you're going to have to leverage that product. And so we like to play nice with a whole bunch of interactions and integrations into the platform.
There's a successful company here in Washington, D.C. called Appian, and they focus on low-code, no-code. And I know the founders, and they're making all kinds of money. So how does that fit in this whole discussion?
So low-code, no-code tends to use GitLab less, right? From an application development perspective, I think the parallel that I can draw, though, is from an AI perspective, right? Back to that term of artificial intelligence, it's helping us to streamline more complex applications into a simpler process. And so it's starting to look a little bit more like a low-code approach, just because AI is helping us create that code so much faster.
There is a retired brigadier general by the name of Greg Tuhill. He's teaching up in Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh now, and he has all kinds of insights. And as he was running things at the Air Force, he famously said that if you prioritize everything, you prioritize nothing.
And he's right.
So how do you set the priorities?
That is the million-dollar question plus. It is so difficult for us to prioritize today because there's so many demands and the speed of things continues to rise. And AI is only going to make it more complex, but at the same time, it's going to help us, right? So for the longest time, when we looked at budgets and we looked at priorities, we would see that speed was rated above security. We would see that the time to market was highly valued from an ROI perspective for the business over what you would do with a security or AI or refactoring of a legacy application. We see some of that changing now, right? There's enough technical debt piled up that if we can use AI to refactor some things, we can now expedite those things into a safe place. So all of a sudden, security, since it's templated and secure by design as a mandate, we're seeing some of these things bubble to the top. In fact, back to that survey real quick, the top budgetary item for 2024, I'm happy to see, is security. Application security is now at the top of the list. That makes me really happy. And what that means is, okay, if we're going to keep that focus, AI has to help us with the productivity gains to keep our ROI conversations, our refactoring conversations alive, and help us be able to prioritize that work with cybersecurity as the core.
In the DevSecOps community, I think they started coining the term continuous improvement. And I think what you guys are doing is talking about continuously scanning the software that ostensibly is approved.
Right. So, yeah, continuous improvement a lot of times is associated with pipelines, which means you've changed something. And that's great until something changes in your code because of a new vulnerability, and it's 2 years down the road, and nobody's looking, right? So this kind of takes the whole idea of continuous improvement for products you're working on and expands it to products you aren't working on. And I think that's really important in today's environment.
I read a wide variety of people. I read a guy named Daniel Pinker, and a guy with curly hair. He's a funny guy. And he recently was interviewed, and he said that no AI system will be infallible. And I think that's obvious, but it may not be obvious for some, because I think people are dazzled by AI and just think it's the end. It's going to wash their car, cut the grass, fix their roof. Maybe you can splash some cold water in the faces of the people wandering around here with following the AI thing. If we had a little sparkly thing with AI, they'd all fall us right off the cliff.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it was, I think, less than a year ago that I could ask AI a question about complex math and then challenge it, and it would give me a different answer. Now, that's math, right? It should be pretty straight up stuff. I should be able to get an answer. And it would take it a while to get back to the right answer. That was a while ago. And early on in that same time frame, we were seeing a lot of vulnerabilities generated in code with AI. That is definitely the case. Where we are today is dramatically better. Is it infallible? Absolutely not. And one of the concerns I have is today, if you go to Google and you do a keyword search, you get how many responses? I mean, the number on the side keeps going up, but hey, you've got a million possibilities to your question. That doesn't change a lot if I change the order of my search words. In the world of AI, though, now you have a search that is semantic based. Now it says, well, wait a minute. I'm going to give you one answer. You get one answer. And I think this is what you're looking for. And if you change the order of the words, you'll get a different answer. Now enter that into the world of coding. If you're entering the right context of natural language processing, you're going to get good code. This is why we're seeing actually early on, we saw junior or lower earlier in their career type developers getting more gain out of AI because it was an instant gain. That has now changed to where the senior developers, those who really know their code, are getting more out of AI because they know how to prompt it deeply to get the right answers. In the middle, AI has to iterate. You might get vulnerabilities, but that's why we have this platform where you run it through a pipeline, and then AI says, well, wait a minute, you've got some vulnerabilities. Let me help you fix those. We'll try this again. And AI is essentially iterating on its own code until we get to the point where it's happy. So are we there yet? No. Are we doing well on our journey? Absolutely. And I love where it's going. It is not a panacea just yet.
Yeah. There is a popular podcast in town called Feds at the Edge. and it's not like a suicide pod. People are jumping off the edge now. Talking about edge computing. Just to clear that up right now.
Appreciate the clarity on that.
Although there may be some federal CIOs who are at the edge today because of compliance concerns, but we got to jump around that topic. So what about edge computing and the dynamic nature of the coding that goes out there? I almost think that SBOM is almost a quaint little thing like Ben Franklin and a feathered pen. It's like, wasn't that nice back in 2014, back in 2023 when we could set SBOM, but that's your father's Oldsmobile.
Yeah, right. Yeah, edge computing, it keeps us on our toes. I'll say that, right? Because what happens in edge computing is we keep pulling more and more capability to the edge. And so let's say today I'm pulling a container out to run it in Kubernetes at the edge. Well, how do I know that's a secure environment? SBOM helps me with some of that. I can now validate the container. I can validate the application running inside. It's just one step of many in making sure that I have secured that environment that's going to run at the edge. That, of course, leads us into zero trust principles and lots of other things that we could talk about. But the reality is that the application security and the container security, that's the core that needs to now be secured by a zero trust environment.
Which is slowly being adapted, I think, too.
Absolutely.
You know, there's so many topics that we can delve into here, and I'm thinking about Feds at the Edge, but let's talk about Feds in the procurement process. And I'm thinking about continuous monitoring and continuous compliance because there's executive orders that are issued, OMB has mandates, NIST has guidelines, CISA has new suggestions, recommendations. I mean, so this continuous monitoring, it has to monitor for compliance as well, or is it just security monitoring? I mean, the monitoring, it's a broad term.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, compliance is an interesting twist in what monitoring does for us, right? And what real time looks like. Compliance is something that, we started this talking about what's baked in. I love the idea of being proactive with compliance and baking it in. By the time we build everything to compliance and scan for compliance, we can now reset that process. We're spending so much time getting to a compliance paper, right, and saying that I've checked all the boxes, that we're lagging behind on emergent threats. And so the continuous aspect of this and the idea of building compliance in is a really big deal for me. That's something that I love to talk about because we're just getting there. We've been so reactive with it for so long, or stuck on some of these different standards that we're trying to get to. It's what I love about some of what's coming out, right? I do consume all that stuff, CISA, OMB, ONCD, NIST. I love the publications. I go through them, and we even produce some alignment documentation accordingly because, we feel that's really important. We've signed that CISA Secure by Design pledge for a reason recently. But if you can't state your compliance, if you can't get there from here, I think that's the big question is why, right? Because if you can't get there from here, you need to start looking at it from that continuous angle versus looking at it in a traditional manner so that you can make sure you're ready for those emergent threats, which, again, we used to have 5 weeks. We're down to like 5 days for an emergent threat.
I almost laughed when you said that.
Yeah.
It used to be actually 5 months. Let's go way back, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So when I was in college, I had some friends, and they wanted to start a company, so they came up with the most ridiculous name they could find. They call it the Ronco Company. And it was funny. They enjoyed it a whole lot. So I like to talk about Ronco software. So Ronco software is on a federal system, and they have to have a patch, okay? So Gitlab says, hey, you need a patch on the system, okay. Well, now what? That's not going to happen overnight. There's a process involved, and then it has to be tested, then rolled out, and then reviewed again, monitored again. It's like, it just monitor it, John, then have some lunch. No, wait. It finds a problem. It has to install the problem. It has to be tested because there are dependencies, and then it has to be monitored again. It is not a broad stroke here, is it?
No. There's no easy answer to that, but I will say there's a few things that we're starting to see. First and foremost is just automation reigns supreme. When you're talking about patching of systems, is it something that's ATO'd? Do I have to worry about that? Is it something where I have to worry about some kind of a new certification for the software? If so, do I have some sort of automation in place that instead of taking me 4 weeks can take me 2 hours, right? And we're seeing some of that happen of, hey, we're going to use Gitlab to help us ATO Gitlab for its next patch deployment, right? Can you do that in your environment? And I think that's a valid question as patching comes to the forefront of you got to do more faster. Well, we can't do it the way we were, so how are we automating that and automating our deployment of that software while maintaining our uptime? It is indeed a challenge, and it really depends on what environment you're in and how many other standards you have to adhere to in order to avoid running something that's not ready for ATO or not ready for your environment.
I interviewed a company in Arlington that does digital twins. And so there's a situation, let's say NASA has a satellite that's in trouble. And so they walked to his company and said, can you build a digital twin of the satellite and fix it? And they did.
Yeah.
Is this an approach that could use with some of these patches and some of these complicated alterations of systems?
Having them up at the same time is fairly common, right? Having something up and evaluating one while you've got another one running is common, but we have to be careful with that because it's a limited time offer, right? We still have to get that patch applied, and we need to do it quickly. So it's something that we can do, and we can switch over between the instances fairly rapidly, but that evaluation time, that's your key. How quickly can you get that done? And if you don't have automation, I feel bad for the administrators who are trying to do it.
Now, automation, two edges. I mean, it can install the wrong patch. I mean, we've seen it, or an older patch.
Right.
And so you go back to the monitoring again. It's just like, when's this going to end? It doesn't. It's continuous.
It is continuous, unfortunately. And, I think, unfortunately, I'll state it, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. We just live in such a complex time where those who are knocking at the door of our systems are gaining more and more capabilities rapidly. And so while we're doing better, we're getting better quickly. And I think the whole idea of the secure by default environment and the whole idea of zero trust, that's helping us, right? Secure these environments longer. But the universal application of that is not in place. And so each and every individual environment still got its struggles. So I think the doors are still open. They'll be worse till they get better. But as we go down this secure by design road and we have more security baked in, better zero trust environments, better cloud adoption, these are all the things I think that are going to drive down the threat levels over time.
Well, Joel, I may get in trouble if I say the word Google at an AWS event, but I'm going to say Google anyway. Let them drag me out of here, throw me out the window, whatever you want. I have grandkids, so I like this word DORA, okay? So they have something called DevOps Research Assessment. Okay?
Yes.
So what does that do, and how does that compare with some services you could offer?
Well, we've actually adopted those broadly ourselves.
Oh, they're principles then. I thought it was a tool.
It really, yeah, well, it's a tool. It's a metrics and measurement capability. The whole idea is there's a lot of interest in measuring what we're capable of today within a developer's environment. How do we know if we're writing code twice as fast and getting it out the door? How do we know if we're not getting stuck in test and we've alleviated that bottleneck? DORA metrics help us get there. It's all a question of developer productivity, and it's a hot button topic. It is something that a lot of folks are asking us about, especially in the era of AI. Okay, I'm adopting AI on the promise of efficiency and productivity. Are we getting it? DORA metrics can help us get there.
So MITRE has the attack framework for the cybersecurity folks.
Yes.
And so Google may be offering a DORA framework for software security people. Is that correct, or am I stretching it here?
It's broad-based. Security would be a part of that, where the security piece, if your security scanning is holding up the works, now you know, right? And so if you're watching your times and the security time continues to lengthen in your process, there's probably something to address there.
Yeah. Speaking of cybersecurity, when I speak to cyber folks, they say, regular company may have 30 tools for cybersecurity.
What?
30? Yeah. And may use some, use none, some find a problem, some don't. Are there 30 tools available for, making sure software is secure?
Oh, I've seen closer to 50. Yes.
So if I walk into an agency, we got 12 tools, we're fine. Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like if you ever collected something, right? Collect them all. It's kind of the mantra there sometimes. The reality is, over time, it's amazing what we collect for specific purposes. Think of it this way: you're in your kitchen, right? You could make a frozen pizza in your oven, but you might have one of those countertop pizza makers. You could do some mixing over here with a single device, but you've got some specialty ones for that greeny smoothie that you want to make in the morning, or you're going to chop up your seeds or your flour over here. There's all these different tools. And so in some houses, when you walk in, the counters are pretty clean.
Yeah.
They just use a few things. In other houses you walk in, they bought everything that was on QVC. We have all the unitaskers. And so over time, we accumulate these things. And the question is, when do we decommission them? They had a purpose. They came in with a specific purpose. They work well for that purpose. But when you get into the platform world now where things are moving, and Gartner keeps telling us, we're moving toward platforms faster and faster, when is that platform sufficient to start displacing some of those things and saving money for the organizations who have too many tools?
Which is the phrase that pays, and this is the cliffhanger for the next interview here of platform or tool. I mean, I'm sure we could walk around the floor here and pick some fights. Okay, you guys over there, you're the platform. You guys over there are the tools. Okay, start throwing chairs, and we'll see who wins at the end of the day here. But there's some very emotional opinions about this. I mean, this is rivals probably the Red Sox and Yankees, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say this. Look, I am part of Gitlab. We are a platform company, right? And I appreciate what the platform can do. But I've also administered systems for a lot of years. And I know where the complexity becomes too much, when the data collection becomes too much, and we have to integrate things, and it's heavy, and it's time-consuming. So this is one of those places where we also play nice. There are times where a singular point solution is going to do something that you need, and so we welcome that with open arms. Integrate it to your pipelines. Run those jobs. Absolutely. We want you to do that. And so I think there's a place for coexistence. I think of that bumper sticker I frequently see for coexist. Maybe we need one for the DevSecOps world.
Well, what about the govies here who may not be able to handle a platform because they can't be run in the cloud? Does that box you out?
Actually, it's just the opposite. We're seeing that a lot of folks are self-hosted, and since that's one of our things, self-managed platforms, it enables them to bring a lot of the tool complexity into their environment today. And whether that's air-gapped or has a potential to reach out for just a few things, that's actually been strongly in our favor from the perspective of making sure that what they see in the cloud is what they can get at home. And so that's been actually very good for us.
I almost see the parallel in AI where people are hosting their own LLMs. It's like, no, we're gonna do our own here. What do you mean? Yeah, we're gonna do our own. No, that's great, but it's happening.
We're actually going there.
Yeah.
That's absolutely where we're going because, again, the cloud is very strong for AI. It's one of those things where you have to leverage it, but there's a cost associated with it. There's hey, I got to put my code to the cloud if you're going to suggest to me how to fix it, right? I'm kind of worried about that. For the environments that can't do that, that's exactly where we're going is, okay, here's the capability. You're going to have to host your own models, but you can do this.
I was interviewing a satellite company in France a couple weeks ago, and the guy's name was Jacques or something. I said, hey, Jacques, buddy, you got crystal balls over there in Paris? And I go, oh, grab a crystal ball and tell me what's going to go on in satellite communications down the road. So you're not French and you're not in Paris, Joel, but we're here at the AWS conference. There's got to be a crystal ball in one of these booths. Go down there and grab a crystal ball. And so where do you see this debate taking place now? Is it going to be platform versus product? Is it going to be virtual? Is it going to be AI? Or is there going to be a chink found in the armor of AI and go, whoa, now we got another new shiny thing to find here? So give me a quick 5-year projection.
So if I look out 5 years, AI has transformed things. Even though there are chinks in the armor today, I don't see how we move away from the productivity and efficiency gains that are coming at us now. We're starting to see the proof of the value of AI. And so what I see as more turmoil for the space is those who are in the AI space and those who are not. Yeah. And if they can leverage it to what we just talked about in an offline type environment where a lot of folks can't get to the cloud today. Now we're seeing more migration to the cloud. I think it's less and less issue. But this is where I think the rubber meets the road. The AI cannot just be applied across the platform. It has to be applied in such a way where the values are tangible, right? I don't want something shiny. I saw somebody do an interview with themselves that was AI generated, right? Oh. What a riot to watch. It's fantastic. The value for me is awfully limited, right?
More than limited.
Show me what the value of what you're doing with AI is, and I'll tell you whether or not in 5 years you're going to be relevant in your space. I think that we're at that level of disruption coming soon. And whether it's a platform or a point solution, it's going to be a matter of, did you apply AI well enough to unfold value for your customers that they can't overlook?
Right, it's the value proposition. It's as age-old marketing and sales is that, so what? I mean, is this going to help me increase security, reduce cost, or maybe take advantage of some of the legacy systems that I think is going to be I personally think in the next 5 years, a lot of these old crickety legacy systems are going to have to be taken down somehow. Whether they use Gitlab, whether they use who knows what their brother-in-law, they're just going to fall apart. You can see, really, the IRS, that system finally fell apart. Yeah. They've been using that for how long now?
Yeah.
I don't know, 50 years?
50, yeah.
Maybe it's written in B. I don't know what it's written in.
Well, and I think that's really important, right? Is some of these legacy systems, we saw what happened to them when demand spiked over the last few years, and so some of them have to be addressed, and we know that. There's no easy way to make that happen on such an old application, and so we're looking at that from a refactoring and an AI perspective, saying, okay, we don't have enough COBOL developers. We don't have enough people who still know Fortran at that level. Maybe what we could do is use AI to interpret that for us, modernize all that, get it to the cloud. Because remember, I talked about the idea of running the same application with 10% of the code. The other outcomes that came from that are 50 times in scale and 100 times in speed at scale. So now you're serving 50 times more people, 100 times faster with 10% of the code? I mean, if this is where we're going, sign me up.
Yeah, I think we're going with butting heads with humans. That's what I think we're going to go. But we can talk tech. Maybe the next interview with Joel will be how to butt heads with humans.
I can tell you a lot about that, Joel.
Well, the next one will be a 3-hour interview. How to get people to change. Well, that's a question here. Unfortunately, here, Joel, we're running out of time. Recording this from the AWS Public Sector Conference in lovely downtown Washington, D.C. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Joel Krooswik, Federal CTO for Gitlab.
Thank you very much, John.
Thanks for listening to the Federal Tech Podcast. If you like the Federal Tech Podcast, please support us by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcast.